Druid, it's a very versatile class. There's many things that the Druid can do. If you want to have a tank, the Druid can be the tank. If you want to do spellcasting, the Druid is going to be able to do spellcasting. If you want to provide support or be a healer, also the Druid can do all of that. So it's a very straightforward class with a whole lot of options that you're going to have at your hands. In this video, I'm going to show you everything that you can do with the basic Druid. We're not going to dwell too much on the leveling because it's going to be a very straightforward Druid. It's basically going to be a animal tank that is going to also be able to cast spells, very powerful spells, and that is also going to be very durable on his spellcasting form. The amazing thing about a Druid is the resourcefulness that it has when it comes to managing, again, pardon the redundancy, the resources that you have at hand. And not that it matters too much. You see, the only great downside of spellcasters in D&D games is that they have to be relying too much on resting. Opposite to, for example, martial classes, which they can just regain everything they want by doing short rests. The spellcasters, usually they have to go through many long rests before preparing themselves through a very difficult battle, and that is something that you have to have in mind in this game, because resources and camp supplies, they are not that scarce in this game, so you can be taking long rests even after a small fight. And usually on the dungeons that we have in this game, yeah, usually there are places to rest in there as well. So yeah, there is indeed that. That being said, we're not going to be multi-classing with this Druid right here. This is just going to be a basic simple Druid, and like I said, because of that we're not going to stop too much on the different levels that we have for the Druid. As for the cantrips, I usually advise for you to have your Shillulo, multipass, this thing. You're going to have this thing, which is going to add your spellcasting ability to your attack rolls. You shouldn't really be using melee for your character, but at the end of the day, this is a cantrip, and cantrips, like I said, they are usually used for managing your resources. We're not going to manage resources that much, but it's something that you have available. Also, I would advise for you to have guidance, because it's my favorite spell in the game. It's a cantrip that you can basically use to bypass every single check that you have in this game, so that's actually quite amazing. As for the ability scores, we're going to have 17 on wisdom, constitution 15, and dexterity 16. The reason for that being is that because at level 4 we're going to increase this bad boy to 16 to be able to maintain our concentration, wisdom to 18 for our spell casting attack rolls, and now dexterity, finally we're going to bring it up to 18 to get the maximum armor class possible to still be quite tanky while we are outside from our animal shape. But as a matter of fact, for the purposes of this build, we're going to be mostly using our animal shape. So here's the thing. One of the most important things about this Druid is that at level 2 we're going to be able to choose our subclass. Now, the subclass that I am choosing specifically for this build is going to be Circle of the Moon, and I just love this thing too much. It's very powerful, it's very simple, and it's very straightforward. The thing is that at level 2 you're going to receive the subclass feature of being able to wild shape into different animals twice per short rest, and there are some little things that we're going to be doing with this thing later on. We also have the Lunar Man, which is going to allow us to spend the spell slots to regain hit points while in wild shape. I advise for you to never ever use this thing in your entire playthrough. The reason for that is very simple. We want to have access to high damaging, high level tier spells, and also we want to have access to being as tanky as possible. The thing is that we're going to have our animal shape at all times, and if we lose our animal shape, we can cast the animal shape on that single same combat once again it's going to be very difficult for the enemy to survive after those 2 casts of the animal shape. And if they manage to get rid of your animal shape, you are still going to have high damaging spells to be able to take care of the remaining of the enemies that you have on the battlefield. Do have in mind that your animal shape, you are going to regain it back after a short rest. And do have in mind that the animal shape, it's just an extra thick layer of combat on top of your already tanky druid. If we build our druid like we are going to be building it right here, like I have it right here, you're going to have access to a whole bunch of armor class, a whole bunch of defensive and offensive spells, and like I said, you cast your animal shape, there is a extra thick layer extra of health right there. You lose your animal shape, you use some spells, you go back into animal shape. Animal shape is going to be using a bonus action, so you can immediately go back to animal shape and still be doing quite a lot of things. After that, like I said, if there's any remaining on the battlefield, you can use your spells to finish them off, and that is why we're not going to be healing our animals, because if you heal your animal shape, you're going to be spending those precious spell slots that you're going to be using to deal damage. And like I said, you do not need to heal your animal shape. After one is done, you cast another one. The combat is going to be done after the burst of spells that you're going to have available to you, and then after that, for the next combat, you just cast another short rest, and there you go. There you have your animal shapes once again. After that, it is actually very straightforward. Just keep placing your levels into the druid. At level 4, you're going to receive your first ability improvements, which is going to increase your constitution to 16, a little bit more health, and also the concentrations for the spells that we're going to have. We do have access to Cold Lightning, for example, which is one of my favorite spells in the game, and it requires concentration, so yeah, there's that. Also wisdom to 18 to get our +4 to our wisdom checks right here. At level 8, we are going to finally increase our wisdom all the way to 20 to get our +5 wisdom checks on our spell casting mostly. At level 10, you are going to receive your class feature for Wild Strike. What this does is that it is going to allow your wild shape animals to attack 3 times on one single action. 1 attack for your single action, and then 2 additional attacks. If you have a hasted character, you're going to be able to do 6 attacks in just one single turn. At this point, if you wanted to, you could probably multi-class into something different to take advantage of something different, because at the end of the day, our beast is just finished right here. So you could take, for example, 2 levels into Fighter. 2 levels into Fighter is going to give you Action Surge, which is amazing because it's more attacks. But then again, we are going to level up to level 12, because at level 11 we have access to level 6 spells. They are not going to be that amazing 6 spells, like we have Sunbeam, which is really not that great if you compare it to different spells that we have on the roster. One thing that it is very useful is the Hero's Fist, and as a matter of fact, this is one of my favorite, because this can be used until a long rest, so that is nice, that is amazing. I always like to carry this thing around. At level 12, you are not going to get any more spell slots, you are not going to get any more new spells, but you are going to get the ability improvement, which we are going to be using on Dexterity to 18. Now, there's something different right here. If you don't want to take the abilities course on 18, you can most certainly use the glows that give you natural 18 dexterity and choose something different around here and there, like for example the Warcaster, which is going to allow you to maintain the Cold Lightning a little bit better. But also you can change that thing for Elemental Adept to increase the damage that you deal with your spells. But then again, I like to use my globe slots for some things different. I mean, that is up to your personal preference. At the end of the day, the most important thing that we want to have is Constitution on 16 and Wisdom on 20. But yeah, there's that. There are some little changes that you can do right here. Like I said, if you don't want to take the abilities score improvement right here, there's a couple of options that you can select as a feature right here, and you wouldn't really have to raise your dexterity that much. You could be getting rid of the strength negatives right here, for example, as well as on the intelligence and charisma. There's a whole bunch of things that you could do if you didn't take the dexterity right here, so just to have in mind that. Now let's talk about the itemization of the build, the items that are going to be recommended for this build. All of this, I'll have them in the video description for you to be able to look them up and see if if you're interested in them. Some of them are going to be locked in certain specific acts, so that is something that you need to have in mind as well. But the gist of everything is that you're going to need a medium armor. The UNT scale mail, that is an amazing option because it has a armor class of 15 plus your dexterity modifier without any restrictions. So meaning if you manage to reach that 18 dexterity, you're going to have a +4, meaning you get a total 19 dexterity modifier armor class, I'm sorry. And if you add that to a nice shield, there's +3 armor class shields in the game, so you could potentially be reaching a 22 armor class. Furthermore than that, when you move forward through the game, there's the armor of agility, which basically does the very same thing. The difference is that this one has a armor class, native base armor class of 17, which you could potentially raise up all the way to 21. Depending on the scores that you have. If you add the shield, you could potentially reach a 23, a 24 even armor class. And if you add spells like shield of protection from the paladin, you can reach a 26 armor class, which is, it's amazing. Like for a spellcaster, which is mainly what you're going to do, for a spellcaster to be able to have that much armor class, that's crazy, that's huge. And I love it. It's a very, very tanky, high damaging dealing spellcaster tank. Although, do have one thing in mind, that none of this matters while you are in your wild shape animal form. So that is something that you need to have in mind. Furthermore than that, you have the Daredevil gloves, which basically make you more proficient and increase your hit chance with the spells that you are going to be using. The necklace of the elemental augmentation, which is something that you can get on the Act 2 of the game, and basically it's going to deal more damage with the spells that you have. I always advise for you to have that thing. Also the Hoarfrost boots that allow you to walk through ice surfaces, and that is always nice because you can actually do some crowd control with your ice spells right there on the battlefield. The Snowburst ring, which is going to cause ice surfaces whenever you deal ice damage to your enemy. The ring of elemental infusion, which adds an element to your weapon. Like I said, we're not going to be using our weapon as a melee that much, but at the end of the day, it's something nice that you can have. And also the Hat of Fire Acuity, which is going to give you arcane acuity, basically gives you attack rolls on your spell difficulty class anytime that you use fire spells, and you do have fire spells like Firewall in your roster. So basically all of the itemization that you are going to be using for your character, it's mainly going to be because of your spellcaster. But the wild shape section portion of the build, it doesn't really matter that you have like this armor or this amulet or that thing, because the wild shape, it's just always going to be the wild shape, and that comes from the leveling. So that's the two sections of the build: the actual stuff that you get from the items and the actual stuff that you get from the native leveling of the build. And then finally, that is pretty much how the build works. At all times you want to be using mainly your Bear form, because you can use your roar to attract the enemies and focus them onto you and make them deal damage onto you. You can take quite the beating. If you lose that beating, you can wild shape back again, because like I said, remember, it's a bonus action, and if you have a hasted character, you have 6 attacks, so you're not going to be the most proficient damage dealer of the party on wild shape, but you can take quite beating. You can take the attraction of the enemy, while the DPS, the casters and whatnot, take care of everything from a distance. So yeah, you don't need any more melee characters while this thing is present, and if you do have your melee characters, they can be quite the glass cannon, because this guy is going to be taking care of everything as a Bear form. And then if you lose its entirety, those 2 forms on the combat, which is highly unlikely unless you're fighting something very, very strong, you still have your high armor class Spellcaster, which is going to have lots and lots of different elements. You can leverage the resistances, the weaknesses of the enemy. You have fire spells, you have ice spells, you have crowd control ice surfaces, you have cold lightning, which is you can use cold lightning and then start spamming the rest of the spells, because cold lightning is sustained. We do have quite a little bit of constitution armor class to be able to bypass all of the saving throws for the enemy if they won't do anything to us. So in reality, it's a very, very well-rounded class. It's a class that is going to have access to a whole bunch of tools, a whole bunch of spells, a whole bunch of melee tankiness. A druid, it's just amazing to have a druid on your party. And if you like the content, like and everybody super appreciate it. No one's told you today that you're a gorgeous and beautiful person. You are indeed a gorgeous and beautiful person. I will be seeing you goddamn gorgeous and beautiful people in the next one. Have a beautiful day and goodbye.